Hello, thank you for joining me today. I'm Jan de Vis, Managing Director of Connect and Transform and Executive Professor at Flanders Business School. Today I would like to share some insights in how leadership development journeys can be redesigned. I have summarized them in my book Leadership Minds Creating Values. A few years ago I started to observe that many leadership programs did not develop the expected level of leadership. And as I spoke with mentors, coaches, facilitators and trainers, it struck me that many of these programs had a behavioral focus. The intention was to teach excellent leaders what to do. The feeling was that this approach was incomplete, and I felt they were focusing on the first step to climb a mountain without addressing the whole picture. An old management bestseller written by Napoleon Hill helped me to understand what was missing. He made the difference between doing the right things and doing things right. A lot of leadership programs address the second, focusing too much on behavior. What was needed, in my opinion, were programs that helped leaders to do the right things, which equals dealing better with complexity and which is a thinking activity. Second pitfall of leadership development programs is that most of them are built on best practice. They offer models developed by others. Participants seem to download those models, and although this has advantages, they do not help participants to develop their full potential. They do not widen the breadth and the depth of their thinking. In fact, they do not address what you can think about. They do not help participants to develop deep thinking, which is necessary to deal better with complexity. In my book, I'm describing the case of Robert. He had an excellent track record as a student and as an identified potential, until he was appointed to lead a major lean transformational program. Then things began to go wrong, and I was asked to help. One of the first things I did was a cognitive assessment using the Destiny methodology. The key in this assessment methodology is to discover how Robert was making sense of things and what was the fluidity of thinking by which he approached and dealt with complexity. This is a necessary step because a lot of people are ruled by the cognitive models they have received from others, and they consider them as the truth. The cognitive interview is the first step to create openings to think differently. And this happens through deconstructing how one thinks. The next step consists in broadening and deepening this thinking, adding perspectives and helping him to see the system differently. And this is a necessary step to start acting differently. This is the reconstruction step. What Destiny does is to identify the structures in thinking one uses and how the person misses things because he simply doesn't master the thinking structure. The basic question is, what does he or she see in the context? What's, in other words, the bigger picture? What does he or she see in terms of evolutions or emerging changes? How does one see the emerging system and relationships and the transformational structures which have to do with anticipating disequilibria? Assessing the mind structures is only the first step in a broader cyclical process. I started to work with Robert to build an insight in how he makes sense of the bigger picture, how he deals with emerging changes, how he reframes relationships or brings things into a relationship, and how he anticipates this equilibrium. Capturing the structures of thinking builds an insight in and deep understanding in how one comes to decisions, how one engages in a conversation, and how one starts to coordinate things. The second step to help Robert was helping him to think more holistically and transformationally. It's about changing the quality of his awareness. We have a broad range of tools available to do this, and I personally like 3 of them. Asking mind-opening questions is one that works on an individual level. I also developed a thinking game to support teams in rethinking challenges, but you can also use that game on an individual level. A second one is to create co-sensing places where one gets deep insight into how others frame issues. And a third one is to organize developmental journeys ranging from visiting clients, organizing pilot safe to fail experiments, and taking up responsibilities outside one's own role. The third step has to do about helping Robert to explore the edges of the system he was working in. On an individual level, this can be done through inviting him to look for disruptive information. What kind of information is not in line with what you expect? It's about dealing differently with feedback. On a group level, engaging with others, there is the ability to defixate the frameworks others use. That's no more or less than helping others to see things differently, to help them explore multiple perspectives and systems. A fourth step was inviting him to start experimenting with alternative logics. This was done by giving him more inclusive growth assignments. That means that, in fact, you broaden his role so that he needs to integrate more information, more perspectives, stimulating him to co-create with stakeholders in the broader ecosystem he was working in. And this step helped him to frame issues differently and to check assumptions and hypotheses. And finally, the fifth step is about shifting the operating system. And on an individual level, this means ensuring reflective practice, co-evolving from the emerging whole and shifting to attention-driven structures. In fact, what I'm doing is searching for a right combination of tools which have to do with integral decision making, with helping Robert to engage in different conversations and to coordinate things in a connective way. So, how can we redesign leadership journeys? I presented a new model here, based on the idea that we need to pay more attention to how thinking and behavior are linked. And I propose the 5-step model. You can find a detailed workout of this model in my book, Leadership Minds Creating Values. But I'm aware I might even myself miss some dimensions, and I'm looking forward receiving your reflections and additions. Thank you for your attention.